Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Card Talk with Tim and Harry, and we are going over some Astra Militarum deck building with none other than the PhD in deck building, aka Slither. How
Be
we
fun.
doing, boys? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited to be on. Thanks for having me on again. It's always fun, like nerding out about the new faction.
Heck yeah. How are you, Harry? What's going on with you, my man?
Yeah. How are you? I'm alright, thanks. You know, the faction is we're liking it, aren't we?
I,
Oh yeah, that's sick.
I'm liking it. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know how
Yeah.
everyone feels, but yeah.
They're fun to play with, but not fun to play against.
I think like
Yeah.
Ursula multiple KD stands is not fun to play against, but I think the rest of it's like okay.
Yeah, yeah, we're definitely going to get into I think a lot of different thoughts and impressions of Astra Militarum, but yeah, I for my piece of it, I've genuinely just enjoyed exploring the faction. I am on my last or like the random legendary node, so like when we're done recording, I'm going to go find out if I can be disappointed or excited. So
Okay,
to see what legendary I pull,
Oh,
but
we'll cross that thing.
yeah, everyone put in a prayer. But yeah, no, I've really the more I've played them, the more I've liked them, and the more I think there are these little like edges you can get, and like sometimes you get the nuts, and we'll talk about kind of like what enables those sorts of draws and stuff. But I do think there are different ways to build them, and they all seem somewhat viable in terms of like I don't know that like vehicles is worse than infantry or vice versa, and you can kind of mix them together. Um, but yeah, I've had a blast with them so far. But yeah, other than that, let's talk about these warlords, shall we? And then we'll dig into some actual lists. And we're just really excited to have Slither again to really talk about the builds and kind of his expertise. Because Slither, what rank are you for the Imperial Guard on the leaderboard right now?
I'm top of the Imperial Guard ladder, um, which is nice. I felt I'm happy I kept that spot for the podcast. It means I can be more of an authority.
You heard it here, folks. We've got the number one Astra Militarum monster in the
yeah.
on the cast today. So,
I feel like there'll be a bunch of people that are like, oh, this guy, he's not even good. He just pulls Kadia stands over and over with Ursula. He's like a noob.
well, on that perfect segue, Slither, why don't you talk us through Ursula Creed and your experience, kind of so far with her? I think we're gonna focus on the other warlords too, but I think I would be wrong if we didn't shout out the fact that there's been a lot of shall we say, passionate discussion about Ursula Creed. So what's
Smashing their keyboards about.
yeah, passionately destroying keyboards. Yeah. So yeah, take us through it. What are your thoughts on her and all she does?
Outside of the legendary poll, I think her talent is just really really good. You know, same as Magus's, but for stratagems. It's either like because it's discounted by one, you can either treat it as like I'm paying one extra energy to use a stratagem this turn, or you're getting a discounted for future turns, which is solid. Duty is really good. Just having a troop at the start of the game is like, oh, um, I think you can kind of see this in a lot of in all the warlords actually. There's part of it that has like a bit of an aggro tint. So for Ursula, it's the early shock trooper, but there's also a bit of a value thing as well. So obviously, just pulling like legendaries each turn, adding to your hand, having them discounted is also just like really good value. So you can kind of play a super aggro. I think BJ made a deck for that. Just like you don't really care about the talent so much. Just like
Yep.
I get a free troop at the start. I'm going to snowball off that. Or you play more to the later game. You know, pull 5 God Spears. You know, wipe the board over and over again. Yeah, it just I don't know. She can kind of do a bit of everything. It's just such a flexible talent.
Yeah, yeah, flexibility and power. It's funny, literally didn't realize that her talent is legendary commandment, which is very funny. Just pulling those legendaries left and right. It,
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's hilarious because so there was talking about obviously the high rolls with Ursula. I've played quite a bit of her and like rarely have seen like, the turn 3 Cadia stands or like some of these other stronger starts. So it's, it is RNG, right? So like some players may not be feeling as much as the power here and there, but the chance to add legendaries to your deck, and there are, particularly strong legendary stratagems, I feel like, for this faction that work pretty well with like different game plans, like you said, Slither with infantry. Um, I feel like the three builds I've kind of seen of her is like a little bit more infantry aggro. And yeah, BJ's covered that I think quite a bit. Sort of this like, I don't know what to call it, but like mid-rangey value. And then I've recently started testing a little bit of like really going a little bit more all in on the vehicle synergies and putting the cost reduction in there as well, and hoping to like nab that at some point to play for zero and just like ramp out those tanks and go a little bit later. So I think for all the fair critique of this talent being extremely strong and efficient, I do like the fact that you can kind of play her multiple ways.
Yeah, yeah. I Warlords could do that, which I think is like, props to EG. They've made free Warlords that aren't like pigeonholed into like one archetype or another.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Slither, you brought it up earlier too, like having a warlord that does have an ability like this, and we've also talked about Magus too. Like for a new player, right? You open up Ursula and you're like, oh wow, this is great. Like I can pull cards out of my, that are not from my collection, and kind of fill things in. I was even talking to Mineral about it the other day because they were like, yeah, I haven't played that much, but like Ursula helps me kind of fill in those holes. So I feel like it does kind of cater to like some people really like that randomness. Some people really like, starting the game and being able to kind of fill in the gaps with an ability like this. But also, it's tough when you get nuked back-to-back turns and things like that. So, yeah. But
Yeah, it's a good point that I think, yeah, from a starting point of view and a learning point of view, you're getting to play cards you don't have, and also you're not gonna like religiously like try out each card, and sometimes you find a card that like works that turn, and you're like, oh, maybe I should. Mechanized infantry was kind of good. Should I main deck that? Or maybe I'll test that for a game. Like, oh no, it's only good off talent. It's it's very fun ability to use. I would definitely say that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, she's definitely been the front runner from day one, I think, and for good reason. We already know that this type of ability is very impactful, and so it'll be interesting to see like if she sees a nerf. I think like the one thing that I was looking at right in the meta report, and again, like it's not say like take the data with a grain of salt, but like it's hard to know exactly how it's getting pulled, like how it's being coded, and as someone who does teach a little bit about data as well in the classroom, I often kind of wonder like what exactly is it telling us. But I do think if you're seeing a new warlord in legendary at a over 55% win rate within like a week, then I'd be really surprised if she doesn't hit 60 for this season. Maybe it's higher. Maybe people will adjust to her, and that'll kind of knock her down a peg. Um, I don't know, but that's just kind of my thought on like how strong she is and how strong she might become. So
Yeah, I think one thing with Ursula, I think obviously we met talking about the KD stands. Like you do have to factor in, I guess, like if every time Ursula plays a game, 5% of the time she gets KD stands first turn, that game's probably going to be a win.
Yeah.
So I feel like that that does probably bump up the win rate by like
yes,
4 or 5%.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and I sort of hope that at the very least, whenever we get a balance patch, that yeah, there's just like some thought put into this so that people could still enjoy her, but like it maybe smooths out a bit of those high rolls, which can feel very defeating. So I definitely understand the critical feedback about that.
Yeah, I've had a couple people resign when I got the turn 2 KD stands. I don't massively blame them. Like, if you don't have the hand to punish it, they get it off. Then you know, it's not good.
And yeah, Harry, did you want to jump in about it? I don't know if you've played against her or with her at all yet.
I've played against her and I've not won.
Okay, there.
Yeah, like the board, mate, was just went insane. I couldn't keep up with it. I played it. I think I've had 3 games against her. I've crafted her, but because she's the epic warlord, and it's like, but if she's gonna get a nerf, I don't know if it's worth crafting her.
I don't know. The thing is, I think the EG hold off on nerfing the new faction for like a month, usually anyway. I think she'll still be good even if you can't pull the legendaries, to be honest. It's still like a nice effect.
I agree.
And the duty's really good.
I was about to say that, Slither. Yeah, the duty is just good, right? You go second. We'll talk about one of the the defense card that most of us have access to. Timely reinforcements, which brings me back to my Magic days, because that's an exact Magic card title that kind of serves a similar purpose. But yeah, it's to Harry's point, it's not hard to develop a pretty crazy board out of nowhere, and really just snowball that advantage for the rest of the game. All right, well, we've definitely covered quite a bit about Creed. Slither, I know I designated you our deck builder to talk about Leontus today. I really have not seen him much, and I don't have him, so I'd be curious, like, when we think about kind of like power and potential, what's been your experience with Leontus so far?
I think Leontus is fun. Similar to what I said about the other warlords. Like his talent, you can either lean into that as a control tool, or you can lean into that as an aggro tool. Actually makes starting against Leontus a bit confusing, because like you see it's Leontus, you're like, is this a siege warfare deck that's like not going to do anything for like 6 turns, or is this like an aggro deck that wants to like go wide and like all these buffed units, and like you don't really know straight away. I think his talent's very good. The talent's good for removal. And you can also just put it down like a please don't hit me. Two energy, please don't hit me. Which if you're playing control is like, it's good,
It reminds me of Ramatek quite a bit. Obviously a little bit different, but I think also Lord Commander's even better than that, just because of the wide boards that the guard can develop.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's interesting. Okay, so it's a little hard to predict like what the build is going to be. Obviously, you'll talk about your build today, but if you had to recommend kind of his niche within the Astra Militarum, what would you say his kind of like role to play is in terms of like deck style?
So I played him as like the late game Siege Warfare. I think I somewhat copied BJ's like Siege Warfare list. But I mean, I've been beaten up by an aggro Leontus on like the odd game, so I don't think aggro Leontus is bad either. If you can finish a warlord off of his duty, by the way, that's like super cool.
Yeah, bonus points for that.
Yeah. I think his duty is quite cute, because obviously you can do 3 damage to something with your talent, but then if you need to like take the turn off, you want to use your full energy, then you just use your duty, which is pretty neat. Pretty straightforward to use. I liked him. Also, like, healing's a bit awkward to get as guard. Obviously, there's Cadian Medic, but you don't really play that in like a control type late game deck.
Yeah.
So just starting at 40 HP and also having a deterrent to people punching you in the face like does preserve your HP fairly well.
Yeah. I mean, it does make sense to me that his role feels like maybe a little bit more control biased, just because he's got more health. You can have that early game deterrent for either clearing units or just like not wanting to take a bad trade. The duty is definitely very straightforward. Like, use it as removal, use it to push something important. And I will say, like, I really do like that all of these warlords have a duty ability on top of their talent. I just think that's a cool direction. Obviously, we saw that with praying for Sisters of Battle. Maybe it's, I don't know. Like, I don't want to say like, hey, we need to power creep things where it's like Warlords also have a secondary ability. But when it feels flavorful and it feels impactful, but not like broken, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a cool addition to what we haven't really seen before. So.
Yeah, I think it's neat. Like with duty that you only get the one use unless you're Denkler, or you use that weird refill card, which most people won't.
Yeah.
So it's a fun bit of decision making, deciding when to put the shock trooper down, when to use the free damage. I mean, even with Denkler, obviously you can reload, but you might not have the energy to reload next turn, so you still it's an extra decision to think about, which I think is fun. It's fun to play.
Yeah, Dankler has definitely grown on me a bit, and I'm excited for Harry and I to talk about him in a bit. Harry, have you had any experience with Leontus yet?
I haven't seen Leontus.
Me neither.
Yeah, he's not that popular.
Yeah, he's not that popular, but I would like to play him. That'd probably be out of the three. I would like to play him because I played the Necron Warlord, and it's similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar
Yeah.
talent, So like, and I played quite a bit of that one.
Yeah, Ramatek is kind of fun. Like, the more I've played him, actually, the more I've kind of liked it. Yeah, I feel like Leontus is also competitive, and maybe it takes a little bit more work to get going. But I just think like 40 health is a very nice thing to have, and I think maybe if the meta shifts, like if decks are like a little bit more slighted towards Ursula, then maybe you can play Leontus and go over the top, and really kind of out control and out value.
If aggro Ursula goes off, I think Leontus is maybe a little bit of a counter pick because you're clearing shock troopers, and they also can't shoot at you to proc regiment without dying.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Cool.
No, that's
not sure it's like a hard counter, but there's definitely he has a little edge into Ursula, I think.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So yeah, I guess if you're seeing a multitude of Ursula on the ladder, which probably everyone is seeing, maybe giving Leontus a little bit of a try. Yeah, I'm actually really excited to get my hands on him. I do want to try some more like go late strategies. But on the other hand, we've got Commissar Denkler, who I got to reveal, was very excited when that came out. Was wondering, how good his duty and the fact that you could potentially refill it and keep going, how good that would be. I think it's a little less powerful than I originally thought it was. Also, just because this faction doesn't have access to a ton of flank. Or rather, it can, but you have to set it up, right? And I will say, if that was the design intention, to be like, yes, we'll have flank, but like you kind of have to get the pieces together, I like that, because if we kind of get into this power creep war of like who has the best flankers, because they're so influential in the game, it feels, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of how that could kind of go. So I kind of like if the direction becomes like, oh, we're going to have these units give these units flank, and if you have this stratagem with these couple of infantry cards, it does this. I personally, from like a design standpoint and like trying to combat power creep, I think that could be a cool direction to go.
Yeah, have flank being harder to work for would definitely. I think it'd probably be an interesting change for Warpforge.
Yeah, don't know if everyone would agree with me, but
I think Eldar players would, have disagreement with you.
Yeah, please don't come for me, the Avatar of Cain. I know you've lost many battles before, but yeah, no, I think the flank is inherent in the game. It's here to stay. But I think if it becomes a little bit more, you've got to do a little bit of work for it so that it doesn't feel like the tempo swings are always so heavy, then I don't know. I think that could be an interesting place to go. But yeah, with Denkler, I think it's hard to feel like in reality either of these warlords really compete with Creed. And I think at this current moment, it's pretty hard for them too, but it's not impossible. And I like first got disillusioned playing some Dankler and just felt like I couldn't get the pieces to fit together. But honestly, my conversations with Slither about different play patterns and different card combinations, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna take what Slither knows is good and start trying to work that into Dankler and just see if that works out. And to be frank, I'm not very high rated right yet. I'm at like almost 2,800 with I would say like probably in the ballpark of like 10 to 15 games with Dankler, but they've been overwhelmingly positive. You have to play the games pretty tight, and you have to see the sequences, more than just like getting raw card power from Creed. Like you can do some sick stuff with lead by example and with your duty ability, but it's all kind of conditional, right? Like sometimes I'm going to use it as a value play to just flank in a unit, even if I'm not using the duty trigger. But then I'm going to have to reinvest with lead example, and just before I go off the rails with too much ranting and raving about different things. Like one thing that honestly I didn't think about, but like has been fine even as a baseline, is if you're going second and you've got timely reinforcements to make a shock trooper for 0. An opener that I've actually really liked is just playing that shock trooper, especially if I've got like, let's say Minka in my hand, which is a card I really want to protect. Timely reinforcements, lead by example on that shock trooper. It's got 5 health now. And as long as I'm not playing into Chaos or Eldar, I've got a little bit of time to set things up. And if I can set those up, then I'm going to run away with the game. So I didn't really think about lead by example as like raw give something +2 health, but like you can opt for that too, right? So anyway, to close out my initial takes here, I think that Denkler has a little bit more going for him in some ways, but you definitely have to work for it, and I think that's what puts him, underneath someone like Creed, who just has some really good raw power and card advantage. But
ironically, despite him being the beginner warlord, I think he's might be the more like technical warlord, because like you kind of got a lot of extra stuff for refilling your duty and giving specific stuff. I kind of understand why his like win rate was so poor, because he's probably
what was it, 38%?
Yeah, I think it was pretty low. I mean, I guess it's probably just because starter decks generally, so you tend to lose whenever you play them. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think he Denkler like has a fair bit of nuance. I think with his kit, which the other two don't. The other two play a bit more Warpforge Warlords, I think, compared to Denkler.
Maybe that's why I'm gravitating towards him a little bit more. Like now that I feel like I have a decent understanding of just what cards seem good, like how to deck builds and a little bit of how to play certain matchups. I do find Denkler pretty dynamic. Like you really can do quite a bit of different lines, and it almost feels like you're playing sort of Gene Stealers again, where you're like, well, I could give this flank, or I could get this duty, and then that duty trigger will do that, and you really do have quite a few options. The definitely the thing you have to look out for is his ability to run out of cards, and I think Slither, just to shout out, I'm going to keep shouting him out, had talked about the Sentinel, the 4-drop that has camouflage and draws 2 cards, and initially I like super wrote that card off, and the more I play with it, the more I've liked it. And I think that there are these, if you're doing the deck building right, I do think that you can kind of shore up some of those weaknesses about Denkler.
So. Yeah, I think like both the warlords outside of Ursula, like your card draw is going to be a little bit of an issue. So I think you definitely need to think about putting in like recon operation or scout sentinel or something. Yeah, because I think both the other warlords can really run out of cards, especially if you're playing like a faster deck.
Yeah, you definitely need it. But Harry, what's your take on Mr. Commissar Denkler?
Like you were saying, there's a lot more thinking, and sometimes you don't want that in your deck, do you? You don't want to have to think too much.
No.
Flash face.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to like just think about other stuff than having to think about when you're going to refresh your talent and that.
Yeah.
But I think they're giving a unit the flank is really cool.
Yeah, it's a big swing. You know, like you're not guaranteed to keep doing it over and over again. That's not how the game works. But when you get that first flank, I always feel like it's like, okay, we are on the front foot. Let's see how we
Yeah.
can snowball that.
Getting the Psyker flank in with the shield feels so
Yes.
good. It brings me back to playing like the old Tau battlesuits deck where you like the Crisis bodyguard with the
Yes.
shield. You got that cheeky free trade. And I always felt it kind of reminds me of that playing the Psyker and giving it flank feels so nice.
Oh, it really does. I'm still going back and forth, not to spoil on like how many to play in the build, but yeah, it's interesting. Like no one else is like really thinking about that card, but like for Dankler, there's like a nice play pattern to that. Even just I played a very very tight game against Abaddon, and what that allowed me to do was like I gave that flank, and I was actually able to shield Dankler, and he got the heal, and like I was able to buy myself enough time to present lethal, where I was, you know, because you load into a match and you see the other warlord with 40 health, and you're like, oh god, you know, like you gotta sort of get your act together. At least that's how I feel, and and so like it's cool. Like I felt like as I was playing the deck, I was like finding more and more play patterns, and I was kind of iterating on the deck, and you know, and Harry's had some experience too, so I'm interested for us to get into it. So let's do it. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, just kind of getting into these warlords and what we think. We did that last time for the Gene Stealers, and I think you know, it's cool to have these multiple experiences with the cards. So, Mr. Slither, tell us about Solar Control. I'm dying to hear about this because I'm probably going to build it as soon as I get them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, this is building off of I think BJ's Siege Warfare deck. I'm still missing a few of the legends annoyingly, but yeah, this is basically just like the first few turns you're gonna be spamming your power to try and clear stuff and avoid getting hit, and you know try and get to your Siege Warfare. But there's a few things I really like in the deck. So move. I think like initially when it came out, people thought, oh, this is like amazing, and then it can, if you're playing a kind of fast deck, it can be a bit clunky because you're playing all your infantry out like on curve. You know, it's obviously it's good, but then you kind of your hands running out, and then you don't actually have much stuff to play move with. But if you're playing kind of a slow deck, and maybe you're not playing your stuff on curve, you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll kill that thing because it's 3 HP. I'll use my power, and then the mid-late game, you have a hand with, was it like a standard bearer and flamer trooper and ogre and stuff. And it's like, oh cool, I can play like all of these and give them flank. Also good synergy with the Astropath as well, if it does get its beauty off. Well, a lot of the other 2-cost spells like Pinning Fire and Recon Operation, I know I do run one, but it feels like a little bit of a low roll to pull those, but like 0 flank to all infantry, like hell yeah, that's a, you know, it's a pretty good card. I mean, it's good on 2 and it's even better for 0.
Yeah.
So I found with the play plan with this deck, yeah, you're playing your talent out early on, trying to clear stuff. You got Pinning Fire, and you don't have too much like removal cards. You kind of just survive, and then in the mid-late game, you try and get a nice move combo off with all the infantry that's like stuck in your hand. And then if you can survive or even like gain the tempo back into your like big bombs, then yeah, you should win. Yeah, I mean this deck was very fun to play. Like the late game tags are so fun. Imperial Guard. It's so nice having like late game troops that don't feel such like a liability to play down. Like they do stuff.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, like Rogal Dawn coming in, shielding you. Baneblade doing a similar thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this deck's a lot of fun. I think, yeah, obviously the only problem with I don't have God Spear, and I think a deck like this really does want God Spear.
Yes.
And we can't. We're not Ursula, so we can't make our own. That's obviously if you have God Spear and you put this in, I think this is pretty solid. You know, kind of late game control
Yeah.
deck. Yeah, fun. You get to play with all the big tanks.
Yeah,
I
who
do.
doesn't want to play a bunch of big tanks? I don't know.
Yeah. And you still get to play the early game infantry too with move. So it's like it's a win-win.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's sweet. I mean, who doesn't want to play a bunch of sick 10 drops that could also get like discounted and stuff? And yeah, I totally agree with Slither. Like it's really how intentional this was. I imagine like, from the design standpoint, they're able to kind of learn from prior sets. But I love that there can be late game tanks or troops or whatever that just are the right formula. They impact the board. They offer something that like your opponent has to deal with, so that if you are paying 9 energy, you're really getting your bang for your buck. And Rogel Doran tank is a house. Like that card, if you've got anything on the board and you play it, you're like going to swing the race. And then I have yet to play my first Baneblade, so I'm excited for that.
It's fun. I think the Rogel is probably like the better unit, but like
Yeah.
Baneblade's still sick. Nice synergy with KD stands, because even if your board's been fully wiped, you can put this down, shield the Warlord, and shield the Shock Trooper, so they can't get like a free no mucking about or one of the like single target, spells. So a little cheeky synergy with KD as well, which is cool.
Yeah, that's a legendary I don't have yet, so I'm excited for that.
Just play Ursula, find like free.
That's what I've been doing, man. Let me get my discounted Cadia stands while I'm at it. Yeah.
Better version.
Well, I think this list looks sweet. We're going to get into some key cards. I know we're going to talk about Rattling later. I've actually been definitely in Denkler very impressed with Flamer Trooper. I've found that card to be a little bit better than I thought it would be, depending on like the play pattern. And I just think it's interesting that like these decks play like kind of infantry, kind of vehicle, and there's quite a bit of synergy between both of them. And man, just some of these cards, like, yeah, even though Leontus doesn't have as much removal, you still got those Attilan Rough Riders. To like pull you back. I don't know what your experience has been with that card, so that if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Great card. Pretty much always recess the board on 4. Scales well into the end game, because you can put it down and then also play something like a Rattling or a
Yes.
Kazakin, some kind of regiment stuff, and then if you can get him down and proc regiment, obviously he's only 2 range, so it's not like super broken, but that can feel really good. Yeah, good flanker early game.
Yeah.
Good flanker late game. It kills a long strike on his own, which is pretty impressive.
Oh, I didn't
Because
think
he only
about
has
that.
long strike only has free melee, so
You get the double attack.
Rough Rider can just like punch into the tank twice and kill it. It's pretty neat.
That is pretty neat. I will say a matchup I've noticed more and more being a little tougher is playing against Tau as
As
Astro Militant.
stream, they kept, whenever you did the Vox into Bombast combo, they would just hit it with Lone Spear and clear both out and still have like a 7 HP unit left. I could see Lone Spear being pretty good into that.
Yeah, Lone Spear, and then even when you're playing tanks, you've got the 6 energy flanker. I always forget the Kroot's name, but that card does, Rampager does some nice work if you're not
that
wide.
Rampager, he grew up on Predator tanks, he really interested too.
That's true. He cut his teeth on so much metal. I actually think that whether you're playing Worshipper or Anva, I think they actually have some pretty decent game into Astro Militarm. At least that's been my experience so far on the other end. But
I think Tau's they can out tempo Astro Militarm definitely, and then they have the answers for the late game tanks as well.
But yeah, this is looking pretty sweet. I feel like this is kind of the shell that I would want to build and kind of start with, and then depending on the legendaries and different what you have access to, you can kind of tweak maybe some of the later game stuff. But things like Astropath is great value. Attilan Rough Rider, Cadian Standard Bearer, like the 4-drop slot is really strong with this faction. I think
Yeah.
3s and 2s can be reasonably good too. Um, so
Yeah, they got good units across the energy curve generally.
yeah, no, it's definitely a massive strength of theirs. So um, sweet. Well, that's a solar control, and I think that's a really great place to start, and maybe with some additions here and there. But it's definitely helpful to see
Yeah.
kind of how that looks.
It is like a budget version. So if you have
Yeah.
the legendaries, just slot those in. Rest of them will work.
That sounds good. You heard it here, folks. This is the #1 Astra Militarum player, baby.
Not with this deck, just to put it
Not
out
with that
there,
deck.
No,
No.
number one with Leontus.
But now as I was saying that, I moved us to the Vox Tempo slide. So
Okay,
this is your #1 deck right now? Is this what you're
yeah,
playing? Okay.
this is my baby.
All right, everybody pay attention for this one. Yeah.
Okay, so
Preach.
I did well with this list in like the end of last season. Actually, I spent a whole weekend playing card and got 3.3 with
Wait,
pretty similar to
3.5?
I had 3.4 at the start of last season. Sadly, I've only managed to hit 3.3k this season. There was the start of the season always has like a bunch of swarm lords, which does eat your shock troopers breakfast, which kind of sucks. This list, the general curve or the infantry, like you either have starts where you're almost playing like the infantry aggro start, or it's like identical to that. But the difference with this is we have the Vox operator for combos with Bombast, Chimera, and Lehman Russ. Probably Bombast is the main one you're looking for. That's your like big swing to come back into the game or to help finish the game. Yeah, I feel I think I started with like a super aggro Ursula deck, which I think is perfectly good. I think it's just as good as the Rough Rider is, he doesn't tend to like get you the board back. He just like clears the board. And I think Guard do have a bit of a weakness of once the opponent has the initiative, it is difficult to take it back. You either need to just put down like bigger tanks that they can't deal with, or you play things like Vox Operator and you have these little combos that can just swing the game back in your favor. So I've been pretty happy with Vox and Bombast.
Yes.
I have put the double recon in. They're actually not really just an anti-stealth card. It's more just this more draw.
Draw two.
We need to draw our combos, ideally. Kind of like your sort of aggro where you kind of shell, but we can play to the later game with Cadia stands and having our like late game combos and Lehman Russ and stuff. I like this deck. It can it can play like super aggro. It can play, and it can also play to the late game, and you have comeback mechanics. So I think I might swap the Manticore out now.
Oh, I was gonna ask about that. Yeah.
You'd think it'd be so sick with a Vox, but because the damage is 2 to 4, I had a game that literally like for like an hour ago. Keltalk played Host of the Dead with 9 stones, had a full board of 4 HP units.
Uh-oh.
And I had the Vox and the Manticore in my hand, ready to go. And it doesn't do 4 damage to any of them.
No.
2s and 3s exclusively. It was fine because I actually still had a Lehman Russ on the board from the last turn, so it was fine. And I was like, come on, dude, this is what this combo is for.
True. Yeah.
And when they're like 1 out of 20 games, I have the combo exactly when it doesn't even particularly perform well. So I think I might swap that for Vanquisher or that you can kind of imagine there's like a flex spot you can put like a legendary in or like whatever you want. I think. Oh, sorry. With Minka, I think Ursula is particularly good just for protecting her straight away. She's a very scary unit, and getting the Shock Trooper in the way means she does usually live a turn. You can start ramping out, getting your Bulgrins out, turn early, or just playing like all your cheaper stuff from hand.
Yeah, cost reduction on a 3-drop is
yeah, very scary.
such a scary thing, and for a faction that just like does protecting very very well.
Yeah, we have so much Vanguard.
Yeah, it's just not hard to hard to imagine like it's hard to get to that card, and then you're just getting so much value from it. Yeah, I've really liked your like what you've been suggesting, and a lot of the feedback you've been giving me. So they're just about like where is some of the power, where's some of the weakness, and pointing out that Vox operator and bombast field gun is just like the way to try and swing back the tempo when you're falling behind.
Yeah.
I've been impressed with Chimera. I'm definitely going to talk a bit about that card when we go over in another segment later. But yeah, I've been really liking Lehman Russ. I really like this curve too. Like I'm sure you could make a swap here or there depending on preference and stuff like that. But I think because Ursula does have her talent, being a little bit lower on your curve just allows you to still get that nuke late game, or the Cadia stands early or whatever. Like she just can fill in the gaps, and I think having a little bit more of a lower to the ground builds, like I feel like this definitely appeals to my playstyle quite a bit. So
nice. Yeah, you can kind of say that the curve kind of extends to like 8 and 9 because obviously you just tack Fox operator
yes.
onto like all the vehicles, and they become a later drop with flank.
Yeah, I really like Kazarkin too. Like I initially was not super huge on that, but like that thing can get some extra value, not even just with the damage, but with the draw off of that. Like recon operation I've come up a little bit on. I will say it's really sick when you've got like a little stupid board and you're playing against chaos and they drop a warp talon, and then you're like,
yeah.
recon, I see you, and then you just pop it for free.
I feel like this list is God in general, but I feel like a faster list can punish stealth pretty well because obviously you've got 2 cards that are, you've got like a dedicated tech card that's also just a good card anyway.
Yep.
And then also with rattling, if you have the board and the opponent tries to like stealth on, like Imperial Guard ways to like punish that, which is actually very satisfying to play because obviously stealth's like one of those things where it's fun to be playing the stealth unit and not fun to be fighting against it.
So true. And I think it's really relevant, right, that recon operation plays really well into some of the better setups from Gene Stealers with Locus and Biophagus and Noxus. Like you're looking at a faction probably quite often based on what I always see going off in the Discord and the global chat of like seeing a lot of Gene Stealer value. And I mean, I'll tell you, if someone is able to just like pick off my Noxus that I'm trying to set up for next turn, or Locus or whatever, it's a huge swing. So.
Yeah, I think actually for that matchup, I feel it's like obviously like I don't know, it's a very interesting matchup because there's a few key strengths they both have. Like Guard can punish the stealth really well, but Guard hate having to play savages. Like they do not want to be like spending like turn 5 playing out like 2 poison supplies. They like want to be on the board first, do all the regiment stuff the turn after. They don't want to take turns off, but you have to play poison supplies because you are going kind of wide, and it's just like punishing to let it stick unless you think you can kill him next turn or something. But
yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. I do think that it's definitely like a give and take kind of matchup, and I do think that having played against you, I can see how you can really set up a nice like snowball in the early game, and if you hit certain stuff with her ability, but also just setting up things through Vox operator, even being able to bombast field gun stuff out of existence is also pretty nice if it's stealth or whatever.
Yeah, it kills a few of the stealth units. Yeah, it's an interesting. I think I would say like the ideal play for Guard would be to like get an early snowball, kill all the stealth units with rattling and recon operation, and then just kill them.
Drop a Lehman Russ or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for the Magus, it would be like just choke them with poison supplies and just get on the board first and force out the like early the early Vox operator combos, and then
Yeah, play Ridge Runner to reset the board, kind of thing, if you can.
yeah, because if guard can't get on the board and like
Yeah.
Vegas or Safa gets to do all the like late game GSC shenanigans for free, it's just game over.
100%. Yeah, and they can blow up their bombs, right? Like backstab them and then like deal that AoE damage. I'm sure it's a very interesting matchup. I haven't played it a ton from either side this season yet, but I think that I'm definitely going to be playing Astra Militarum and Gene Stealers. I really do find these factions to be very fun and interesting to play. So I think they're going to be in my 4-faction rotation for quite a while, to be honest. So
also Magus and Ursula both have the like talent bullshit, you know. Magus can get to Saboteurs or like 3 Gene Stealer Familiars. Ursula can get multiple Cadia stands and God Spears, you know. I guess there probably is a bit of RNG to the matchup as well, just off of that.
That's true. I definitely have been preferring Primus Safa a little bit more for Gene Stealers, just because I kind of like the setup that you can have into certain matchups. But yeah, I think Magus is kind of like raw powers there. Same with Ursula.
If you play an action like God Spear is a bit awkward because God Spear's on E9 and you can Infestation on 7.
Yeah.
And proper AoE is a little clunky on guard unless you're like Denkler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did win one of the GSC matchups I played last night as Denkler because I was able to go Flamer into protect my Flamer, use it again. So.
Oh, that's so annoying when they got the Flamer and protect it and you just can't kill it. It just keeps like getting 2 HP and flame your board again.
Yeah, 2 to 3, 2 to 3. Yeah, yeah. So that's probably a good segue for us to get into Denkler. But yeah, definitely big shout out to Slither here. Like you're tearing it up on the ladder. I know you were saying like you're winning 4 out of 5 games at 3.3K right now. So I think just, you know, to the viewers out there, like you really can't go wrong probably playing this Warlord, and then I think you'll definitely find, I think, Slither's approach to this Warlord pretty effective. Like you definitely have to pick up different combos like he was talking about, but I really think that the core of this deck, if not all of it, is incredible.
Thank you. Just what was it? Only thing for the deck is like you do sometimes have games where your Vox is just hiding at the bottom of the deck, you know.
Yep, yeah, I've had that.
You gotta just take those L's when they come, I guess.
Yeah. There's got to be a little negative RNG for you too, you know, so it's just to keep you on your toes. But yeah, that is Vox Tempo by Slither here, and we will close the deck list out with my favorite named deck, which is my bad deck for Commissar Denkler. I just was like, I think I made this when I was like, oh man, I can't get Denkler to work, and then of course, funnily enough, I've actually come to really like this build and feel like I'm trying to get to a different level with it. Harry's also had some experience too with Denkler, so yeah. So I think like we've talked about some of these cards already. I kind of like running this sort of like early game package with. I did the Slither tech. I was like, I'm putting Vox Operator in here. I don't care, and I'm gonna run, you know, some of what are my favorite vehicles for the faction because I just think that it works pretty well. And it hasn't felt clunky, you know, and so definitely when you look at this deck, you're like, okay, it seems pretty aggressive. The curve is fairly low, but it doesn't necessarily play that way, right? Like you might play Feyburn early, you know, to discount. Like it always feels good when I can discount like a Lehman Russ or like Nork or Chimera because it just allows for us to have a nice mid game a little bit ahead of curve. But like Rattling early, Medic early, it's not hard to put up a little bit of defense, especially if you're on the draw and you do have timely reinforcements. Recon, I found so far in terms of the card draw, 1 Recon Op and 2 Scout Sentinels has felt pretty decent to me. I mean, I think Slither's talking me up a little bit on second Recon here, but well, I'll do a little bit more testing. But honestly, it felt good. Like it felt like most of my games, yes, I would run low on cards like in the mid-ish game, and then I would be able to recover a little bit. And then yeah, like you can loop stuff with Flame Trooper if you can protect it. Same with Kazarkin, getting you that card advantage or that damage. Minka does a lot of work in this build. Ogren's obviously just kind of good all around stats. I like the one Summary Execution. Um, sort of, and maybe I'll get flamed for this, but I actually cut an Attilan Rough Rider, and my thought process, if I could share that, before I get shot in the back of the head here, is just that I just feel like the unit can do some work in this build, but I'd almost always rather be playing Cadian Standard Bearer or Scout on 4. And I just find that sometimes there can be a little bit of this tension where like I'm trying to develop early, and then Attilan comes and I'm like, all right, well I get one attack. I'm not really getting used to the Bloodlust so much. So I don't know. I'm still playing around with some of the numbers, but honestly, that's felt pretty good. I really like the 4-drop slot quite a bit. We've got Bombast Field Gun. I've generally liked one Psyker. It definitely can do some work. And then kind of a typical, like I would say, like mid-range or aggro late game with Chimera, Nork, and the Lehman Russ. I tried playing like the nuke in here. It just felt really clunky if I wasn't playing Astropath, and I'm not. I think that definitely a big differentiation with this list versus others you could build is if you've got all the good legendary strats, like you've got nuke, you've got high command potentially, and or Arcadia stands and stuff like that, like Astropath is great for you. I think in this particular build it's not, so that's why I chose to kind of build it this way.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I've been playing Denkler. They're more of like a late game version with Astropaths in.
Yeah.
And it felt good, but obviously you're like, well, I'm supposed to be pulling like high command and gods and stuff, and I'm not. And yeah, it feels like there's a bit of a power level to the deck that you can't quite get to if you don't have all the legendary stratagems.
Yes. Yes.
But you don't like have to. It can still be fun, play Siege Warfare on 8 and stuff. But
yeah, I think you can get relatively far, like the more you learn. The thing is, like, his life total is a liability 100%. Like, you really do have to manage the 30 health pretty closely, and there are often times where I'm like, sure, I'm a little bit ahead on board, I could trade my health here for a little bit more, but really what I would say as like a good rule of thumb is like, I don't think I'm really going to be attacking unless I've got Regiment on the board, or unless I am like very ahead, or like I'm trying to race against some sort of constraint in the late game or something like that. Because if you overextend with his lack of life total and the fact that it's hard for decks with, just Astra Militarum to recover without the right pieces, you can like bleed health like unnecessarily and not do so well. So I think that's just kind of a caution of like, don't look at this and be like, this is my aggro deck. It's not going to play necessarily like that. Sometimes it will. Sometimes you live the dream and you've got like Cadian Medic popping off and healing you, Rattling taking care of whatever they're playing. You're, and then you're, getting something down like a Chimera or the Lehman Russ, and you're just kind of running away with the game. But yeah, I think what's cool about this deck is it can be very dynamic. You don't have to play it one way or another. And I think it does really reward like a bit of player skill and like matchup understanding. And so if you're kind of into that, if you're really looking for a little bit more of that like dynamic depth, I do think that the dubbed bad deck here is actually pretty decent. So
I would second that. If you feel you kind of got the grips of Warpforge and you want a Warlord with a little bit more, I don't know, an extra layer, like Denkler is the guy.
Yeah. But Harry, tell me about your experience with Denkler so far.
So, I learned I wasn't an experienced Warpforge player playing him. Yeah.
Rubbish.
I'm not good with the 30 health unless I've got the heal,
Yep.
A lot more healing than just a medic.
This is a Warshaper veteran we're talking with, so you know what kind of stuff he likes to do. So
Yeah, I like a little bit more healing. Because
Yeah.
I like obviously I like my games to go a lot quicker, innit? Like the longer the game goes on for, I notice the worse I do. That's why I rarely play control. Like I think that my my attention goes somewhere else.
Mm,
Like for long games, you know.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I've really been enjoying other factions a lot more. That's why I've not really played as much um, Imperial Guard, but they've got some cool cards like, and yeah, that Rough Rider.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need two of them in your
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, maybe I was cooking a little too hard last night when I was unwinding from work. I was like, we're gonna get in the freaking lab and just I'm taking all the rails off. Yeah, so that's fair.
To be fair, with some decks, sometimes certain flankers actually aren't like key. I think in like the Magus deck, the like, higher tier players
The
started
pure
cutting
strain.
yeah, they started cutting it because it wasn't really a tempo card. It was just like removal on a stick.
Yes.
Which I think it's kind of interesting. It's interesting. Normally in Warpforge, it's just like, okay, no, if it has flank, it goes to the deck no matter what.
Yeah.
But then occasionally, sometimes it's like, no, maybe you play something else.
It is a pretty good rule of thumb, but yeah, and definitely Attilan Rough Rider offers quite a lot. And I know Harry's been grinding other games too, and it's funny, we always talk and it's like, oh yeah, we got another release coming up, and he's like, well, I haven't even gotten to play with the Gene Stealers yet. And I'm like, buddy, you gotta keep up,
Yeah.
So that's honestly, it is a good sign though for the game that like you're also still enjoying not the newest thing, you know what I mean? So um but yeah, I think it's cool. Like we're definitely more aggro players at heart. That's kind of why I was like initially frustrated with Denkler, because I just didn't really understand how to push that advantage. Or like, man, 30 health feels like a huge liability, and I think it is to a degree, but it's more about like just making efficient attacks, and really getting value from your regiment, and like really seeing every turn as like, okay, I can attack with my warlord, or I could give something flank, or I'm going to refill my ability. So like, which of those three is a good idea,
Yeah. And also, do you refill yourself because that's guaranteed, or do you refill like a troop so
Yes.
he can heal it as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I shared earlier, like sometimes I'll just slap 2 health on a shock trooper that I get, or um, sometimes, like, I think often you're refilling him to give flank because it just kind of makes sense that way, and your health
Yeah.
does get pretty low, but it is very dynamic. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So that's all of our takes on Mr. Dankler. I do think that he's going to be the hardest to really master. But I do think that there's an edge there. I went from like, I pretty much cruised from like mid 2500 to 2800 over like 2 nights playing this list. So take it with a grain of salt. It's still early days. I haven't been grinding against some of the best players aside from Slither nuking me here and there. But
Yeah, when I stream snipe you, totally not on purpose.
right, exactly. Which I
I,
always enjoy. But yeah, we'll see. But I'm really impressed by things like Lehman Russ and Chimera, and just like Slither really put me onto Vox Operator, and I just haven't really gone back from that.
nice. I think BJ was not that keen on box separator, but I'm happy we've got one person on my side.
Yeah,
The card is.
I mean, it's different, right? Like it requires setup, it requires like a higher curve, to get that value. But I just think you sold me really quickly when you're like, what do you do to recover?
Yeah.
And just one of the best ways to do that is Vox into Bombast.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honestly, sometimes if I don't really have like too much trouble curving out and I'm kind of thinking about the late game, if I draw a Feyburn, I'm going to discount my operator or the vehicle, right? And
Yeah.
so that shaves off a little bit of the mana strain. And also, I don't know, maybe people will kind of like start to think about that more, and that'll make it a little bit worse. But I genuinely feel whenever I do Vox into a vehicle, it's like a massive swing. Um,
Yeah, it's well worth the two
right,
energy.
right.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to my board, Nork. I love that card. He is a legendary, but he's just a beefy boy, and I love when he comes in and he's like, "Get behind me," and I'm like, "Okay, man, that sounds
And he
good."
swings for 7 damage when you're playing Denkler.
Yeah,
Kills like a Venom Crawler or something for you.
yeah, man. It's
Uh,
been it's been wild. Also, it's not hard just to not that this card needs any attention, but Katie and Standard Bearer, if you set up even a marginally decent board with that card, and you can use its ability, and sometimes I've been able to like even refill it and go again, the following turn, like your little dinky units plus regiment turn into I can actually clear a Venom Crawler without too much trouble, which is like a pretty sick thing, when you're playing against obviously one of the better decks in the format. That also has a pretty decent matchup into you. So, yeah. So
yeah,
that's
Swordom is not fun for Imperial Guard, I'll say that much.
no, definitely not. You see spawn them, and then you're like, please also don't have the thing give a mark to every single creature, and you're like, oh god, it's yeah. But I actually had an insane chaos game. I'll put the video up this week, where it was truly back and forth, but I was able to kind of weather each threat and like just keep pushing through, because if it's late game and you're roughly even on cards with your opponent and you do get a Lehman Rust to stick, it really swings the game,
Oh yeah.
from my experience. So all right, sweet. We definitely got all of our input here on Commissar Denkler. And before we go today, we definitely wanted to just talk about some of our, little favorites, little sleeper cards. We've got Bombast in the background here. Shout out to Bombast. We've got some cards we definitely already talked about, but I'll just kick it over to you, Slither. Rattling. Why do you like this card? Also, do you think it's being slept on? Like, are people not playing this as
uh,
much?
yeah, no, this I don't think it's being slept on. I think it's just my favorite card. It's just like
Yeah,
the
sick.
2-drop you always want to see. You're never unhappy to see it. It always does something. Like turn one, it lets you kill that opposing shock trooper or
Yes,
guardian
so
drone,
good.
something, and it gets you back on the board. That one damage is so critical. But in the late game, if you've got a board, maybe you don't have to trade into that. I don't know, Venom
Yes.
Crawler or Chosen or something. You can just swing face. And Rattling will will do the work for you. Um, I love like the fact it goes onto a troop. Even though it is a little bit random, you can kind of do the math and try and make it go where you want it to go.
Yep.
And also a stealth killer as well.
Yep.
Like killing Gene Stealers and Biophaguses with this boy. It's like, oh, chef's kiss. It's just so satisfying. Like I'm gonna swing your face and kill your stealth unit. It's just the card just does so much. It's so good. One of the best 2-drops in the game, I think.
100%. I love this guy. Yeah, it's like, especially when you have those turns where you just send everything at face, and then he's like pinging the thing on the side. This dude's just like sitting there, just sniping and then reloading and sniping. He's just going off, and yeah, I mean, I definitely I feel the same way. Like I cannot talk this card up enough. It's just what you want. It has the potential to scale nicely or really combo quite well. And that's part of what I love about this faction is I just feel like there are these like little bits of value here and there that either get you a little bit in the early game or can also be kind of snowbally in the late game. It does feel like Regiment is well supported in this faction. I really didn't know if we were going to see Mob, 1.0, which was like no one
Yeah, it's not
cares.
very
But it's really supported as a mechanic, and I think a lot of the Regiment staples that we've seen so far are they pull their weight for sure. So, you want to talk about move?
Yeah, sure. So I know I'm a big Vox Vox operator enjoyer, and obviously the Vox is amazing. But I kind of said this on BJ's on tier list, but I think um, with all your guard decks, you need to solve the problem of how do I get back onto the board once I've lost it, and like
Absolutely.
Preferred isn't enough.
Yeah.
And I think your answers are either Vox or your answer is move, move, move. Both do a similar thing. Vox is more a combo. You need to combo with like your specific vehicles to do its job. Move, move, move. If you've just got your like regular infantry, like most of them are good to flank.
Yeah.
The standard bearer already a good 4-drop. Play on 6. Give it flank. You can use the duty straight away, and then your warlord and the shock trooper can swing in for 8 damage. That's like you can kill a venom crawler with that. And it gets better the later the game goes. I think I mentioned it with Leontus, but yeah, if your deck's going a bit later and maybe you're not getting the opportunities to play your early infantry out proactively, it feels really nice having them all banked for like a big turn of move, move, move.
Yeah, you've definitely talked me up on this card in this cast, Slither. I really do think I initially looked at it and I was like, generally these effects have been pretty solid. Crump to Gits being the clearest example. But kind of, what just didn't really see it as a piece on the chessboard. But I think the more you've talked about it and like the more the role it plays in the faction, it makes much more sense.
I think I would just like to the viewers, I'd encourage try out decks of Vox, try out decks of move and move, see which we prefer, because I think both have their pros and cons. I think Vox definitely has a higher ceiling with some of the vehicles, but move probably has a higher floor.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be dead in your hand in the late game unless you've completely like dumped your hand of all troops.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway point as well. Obviously we've talked quite a bit about the Vox operator. It's I think there's a bit of a preference, like Slither was saying earlier. But I just really have been impressed with it. I just think that it does what it needs to do. And like, sure, you'll get it here and there where, you're missing one piece, like you've got the bombast without the operator or vice versa. But I generally think that it increases the power level of your deck in the sense that you're able to deal with the mid game and play nice into the late game. And to kind of shout out another vehicle that works decently well with operator is Chimera. And I think this is a card that I just imagined would be good, but it still always kind of is a little bit better than I think it is, because it's 6 energy for 7 health, generally a good thing to see. Its attack stats are nothing crazy, right? And that's definitely the weakest point of the card. But the fact that it hits the board and gives infantry in a faction that can generate quite a lot of bodies, armor 1, and if you do flank it with operator, and like you're trying to protect some regiment stuff, or you're trying to set up for a following turn, right? Like Chimera in and get your 2 shock troopers. Now your shock troopers and your operator all have armor, right? It can be really obnoxious to deal with, and I just think that this card, if people were feeling down on it, I kind of get it. Like, it sort of felt like the Sentinel to me, where I'm like, is this good enough? Like, as a common, like, is it doing enough as a vehicle? But again, I think it's more about identifying what role does the card play. And I think Chimera plays actually multiple roles. It can either enhance your board that's already established, build you a board potentially. In combination with Vox Operator, you can get that sort of like board in a turn a lot more reliably. So that's kind of why I've chosen to use Vox Operator, because I'm like, I like Bombast, I like Chimera, I like Lehman Russ. Great. Let's give them flank, So, and I like Sentinel too. So like, if I really need to do that, I can, and go ahead, Slither.
Sorry. I was gonna say the nice thing with Vox into Chimera as well is your Vox operator feels so like nice and safe in its little like nest, just the 2 armored shock troopers.
100%. Yeah, he can keep calling the boys in,
Yeah, if he like survives, then you're leaving Rust bits to come down and like come in with flank. Yeah, it's such a nice play.
Yeah, it really does a lot more than you might think it does. And then just to kind of shout out timely reinforcements here. This just going second and having this card, I'm always happy. It just really, you can use it early game if you want to. You can set it up for a turn where you're going to play Chimera, or other things. Like you really can utilize it however you need to, and it is just efficient for what you're getting. So
I think in the mirror, especially like the kind of Ursula aggro mirror,
Oh.
I think a solid play is if you don't have the best hand, but you have Rough Rider, you wait until you play Rough Rider, and then the Rough Rider's on 2 HP, but it's okay because you get to block for him with the shock, with your shock trooper, which is a nice like.
oh,
way of
true,
swinging the game back in the early game.
true, yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised that Harry likes Attila and Rough Rider. I feel like that would be a card
It's a fun
that
card.
he's a fan of. Is there any card for you, Harry, that's also stood out? I know I only had so much room on the slide here.
Do you know what it is? I slept on a lot of cards.
Okay.
On the,
Yeah.
but I thought all the tanks were going to be like too far. I didn't even think you'd be able to play all the tanks. But all the tanks are in most of the decks. And
Yeah.
even that sniper, that rattling.
Yeah.
I just assume that like most of the heroes now have got 3 damage. So I just assume that like it's not gonna
be that good.
Yeah, it's not gonna be that good, but like
All the
stood out a
vanguards.
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just protect it.
The pieces really came together for this faction. I feel like Regiment supported, Vanguard works with Regiment, it works with other things, and I think if anyone's been struggling with this faction, especially if you don't have access to Ursula, which clearly can bump up, your effectiveness. I'd really just say, like, from everything we've shared today, it's like really looking at these cards as what role do they play, and really thinking about like what is the guard good at, and like what do they need help with, and so how can you sort of construct your deck to meet somewhere in the middle, so well, I know we could talk for literally forever because we love to talk about this game, and this is Card Talk, the podcast, but
How long was it in the end? I feel like we've definitely gone over the hour.
oh yeah, we definitely did, but we're
You always do.
we try over here, but I really appreciate as always Harry being here with me and Slither joining for these special deck building episodes.
Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Yeah, of course, Matt. You killed it last time. I think people really enjoyed from all of us getting to look at a deck for each warlord, and maybe even break out a little bit of what tends to be the meta. But I think furthermore, it's like we all have different approaches to deck building, and like I think what a lot of new players and players who are new to card games struggle with is like yes, there's card evaluation, but it's like I see the pieces, I just don't understand how they fit together, and I think being able to kind of like voice different synergies, different play patterns, and like these sort of rules of thumb that we can talk about, I think it helps. So
100%.
yeah. All right. We'll get going here. Thanks everybody for joining us as always. Appreciate the support, the likes, comments, subscribes, all that good stuff. And I'm going to keep saying it on every video. We are working towards a special event for 1,000 subscribers on the channel. So, if you're liking the content and you want to show your appreciation and potentially have some fun in the not so distant future, definitely feel free to subscribe. But just thanks, Harry and Slither, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other, whether it's another faction or reinforcement, very soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Awesome to be on as always.
Of course. All right. Until next time, everybody. We'll see you then.